Let us return again to that idea of forbidding bread to be brought into the holy temple. It is again what bread represents, rising, because it has that energy intelligence that says expand, more, the desire to receive. There's been a curtailment. But on Shavuot, when the energy, thought, intelligence of bread is brought to its curtailment, it is only then that we can experience a continuity of energy. This was what Shavuot was all about. So the fear of the expansion of negative energy intelligence by the desire to receive for oneself alone just didn't exist. In fact, death is only a result of the prevailing and continued existence of the desire to receive for oneself alone. When we speak of the Messiah, are we really waiting for an individual to be coming through that eastern gate in Jerusalem on a white donkey? Is that what we're praying for? Is that what we have been praying for 2,000 years? I'm afraid to disappoint you. As he hasn't come for 2,000 years, don't pray for him to come any further or any longer, because he only represents and portrays the activity of humankind. When man learns to live with his fellow man, when man learns to put a final end and draw down the curtain on the desire to receive for oneself alone, you then can expect that man on the white donkey to come through the eastern gate in Jerusalem, because all he does is inform us. He provides us with the cosmic intelligence that all of humanity has finally come to the realization that there is only one way to maintain order, structure in this universe. How? By restriction. How? By the curtailment of the desire to receive for oneself alone. And when this realization has finally come into existence, you can be sure that we have arrived at Bila Hamavet Lanetzach. You can be sure that death has taken a holiday that will last forever. Therefore, we bring bread on this holiday. It is Chag Bikurim, the firstborn. We're dealing at its most elemental aspect, the Bechor. You remember the slaying of the firstborn. That's what this is all about. Working not at the physical reality level, where there's very little you can do. If you work at the fetus level, if you work at the seed level, there's something you can do. But if that seed is manifested with disease, and then you begin pruning your tree, you're not going to get very far, because the seed is constant. The energy of the seed is constant, and if it's diseased, diseased, in effect we're recognizing the prevailing thought, energy, intelligence of the desire to receive for oneself alone. Why does the Ari say, stay up all night? Now we'll get to what you're supposed to do. But stay up all night. Why? by being awake. By being awake that evening, the rebirth, the cosmic event again appears. That which cosmic event? The marriage event, where the Shekhinah, which is Malchut, where the energy intelligence of a nation at the time of the revelation on Mount Sinai created the vessel that could capture and tap in continuity. This is Mount Sinai. What we're in effect saying is that this cosmic event that happened on Mount Sinai is here each and every single year. And that's why I can't stress often enough that what we are witnessing in this holiday of Shavuot has nothing to do with tradition, Jewish heritage, or remembrance. It is an opportunity for us to take advantage of an opportunity, of a God-given opportunity to tap energy. It was this holiday, Atzeret, whereby the energy intelligence of the desire to receive for oneself alone was finally laid to rest by the cosmic energy intelligence of the desire to restrict. Had the Jew not gone through the experience of a golden calf, we would not be listening to this tape this evening. The desire to receive for oneself alone would have been permanently and eternally laid to rest. But the golden calf changed all that. We were not ready. For whatever reason, we were not ready. And so the cycle of the cosmos continues to roll on and provide us with that energy of Shavuot, without which we could never continue. This is the significance of Shavuot. And therefore, Rabbi Shimon and the Ari can assure us, provide us with this life insurance, because we, in effect, in this frame of 1 year, which will be more fully described in the tape on Rosh Hashanah, within this frame, we can inject a change in the cassette for the year. If, heaven forbid, one of us listening to this tape after Shavuot, did not receive sufficient energy on Rosh Hashanah to complete this year, we have the opportunity here to change that cassette. How? By injecting that energy intelligence called Shavuot, that at least for 3 months can lay to rest death, for 3 months only, because we work on a reel-to-reel basis. After the golden calf, continuity is from year to year. It is not eternal. And therefore, green is very symbolic of this holiday of Shavuot. It is on Shavuot, by being awake meaning that we recognize and we take advantage of the cosmic intelligence that pervades the entire universe. It is ours, and let's take advantage. Therefore, it is called the marriage. It is the marriage between Israel and the Lord. It is a marriage between the bride and the groom. Bride representing the desire to receive, female negativity, and the groom, Zeir Ampin, sharing. These two have been merged together into one unified whole by the energy intelligence of restriction, Atzeret, that assures us, to Umim, Gemini, ensures us that the two aspects of the unified whole have become one. So essentially, the great revelation that took place was not so much the revelation of the document, but rather a revelation of two opposing forces becoming one unified whole. It is for this reason that on Shavuot, it is tradition, possibly without knowing why, trees are placed both in the synagogue and in homes. It is not merely a tradition, but rather it is like the flip of the switch. It triggers, it initiates on a lower level, on a terrestrial level, so that we can activate the metaphysical upper level. Trees, that central column kingdom, the thought, energy, intelligence embodied by trees, become pervasive not only in the home, but also in the synagogue and vice versa. This is the significance. Why Shavuot must be felt in each and every aspect, because we're out to buy life insurance. It is not religion. It is to provide us with life, provide us with the control of the cosmos to the extent that we can even control death. That's a heavy scene. And no other holiday, no other timetable, which means holiday, can provide us with this kind of power than the holiday of Shavuot. To quote the Ari in his Pri Etz Chaim, page Taf Kuf Mem, which is 540, he informs us that in this night, the Keter, the Bechor of Zeir Ampin, is present. This is the source of our energy. And it is customary that after being awake all evening until the morning hour, until Alot HaShachar, until the rising of the morning star, prior to the Alot HaShachar, I hate to use the word customary, but the Ari suggests that we immerse ourselves in the mikvah. Important. And I quote, Ba'ashmoret haboker, ma'at kodem alot hashachar, be'et shemashchia pnei harikia sod ayelet hashachar. In other words, for those of you who have been up and have observed the sky at this hour, you will notice the darkest, blackest color in the sky that you will ever witness in a 24-hour period. Why is it so black? Just prior to the rising of the sun, the darkest hour, again, we have the aspect of Atzeret. At that moment, termination. At that moment, the end of light. But if we can only remember that when we restrict light, when we put an end to light, it is the source for the beginning. That's why it's so black. That's why it's so dark. When you're out in the country some evening, you don't feel like sleeping, or if you rise early enough to observe a few moments before the morning star, look up and you will see that black sky. That black sky, while from one perspective, it looks like the end. No hope, no light. But this is the beginning. And so the Ari continues. When we come to that point in time in the evening, Az mitzvah litvol, the Ari suggests that we then immerse ourselves in a mikvah for the purpose kidei lekabel tosafot kedusha mibchinat haketer, because then we can connect with that which is occurring in the cosmos. Malchut, states the Ari, Malchut reaches to its highest heights, to the Keter of Zeir Anpin. To that point whereby death no longer can grasp. That point where there has been a complete tikkun. While it may be only temporary, while it might be only to the end of the year, but at least we do have an assurance that life is ours for at least another 3 months. There is another minhag, according to the Kabbalist, that after praying in the morning, and again, I don't have to stress often enough the aspect of praying, meaning connection, we then make the kiddush. I know I've gone a little ahead because you're all waiting for the method by which we make our connection to this awesome power that's ours this evening, but I'll come back to it. But there is a minhag, a tradition, quote, of having kiddush and including some dairy products, cheese or whatever. Why? It's never done throughout the year. Why dairy products? Well, from what we have just said, Malchut, the embodiment of the desire to receive for oneself alone, has touched base at Keter of Ze'ir Anpin. It's taken that giant leap right back into the future. It touches the end by going back. Back. Stop. You touch future. You touch Bila Hamavet Lanetzach. Therefore, as we know in dairy products, it comes from the giving of life of an animal or a mother. Milk products, are the direct result of birth, life, continuity, sharing. A humankind never shares as the sharing and creation of a new life. That is the energy intelligence, the internal aspect of milk. In fact, that's why there is no spoilage in milk. If it goes sour, you got sour milk, and you go on and on and on. It's only meat that spoils. And once meat spoils because it's red, because it embodies the aspect of the desire to receive for oneself alone, oh sure, that's it. It's all over with. But not with milk. And because Malchut has achieved and reached the cosmic level of Keter, of the crown of Ze'ir Anpin, we demonstrate. And when we say we demonstrate, when we say we symbolize, we're talking about an action. Flipping that switch, compared to what happens afterwards, is so minute and minor. And yet, that's where it happens. You flip the switch, and look what happens. Energy, electrical current. Look at all the things that are put into movement, even to the extent of, heaven forbid, pressing that button could also mean the destruction of the entire world. Pressing a button. Little actions, because as below, so above. Itaruta de letata, you have an itaruta de le'ela. When you have an arousal below, all that is necessary is just a little arousal, a little effort. And look at the results. Look at the rewards. Incredible. It almost appears as if it's bred a shame. For that little action of flipping a switch, I then am entitled to this giant, extravagant reward? But that's the way it is in our daily life, and so is it on Shavuot. This is the connection between Lag BaOmer and Shavuot. Lag BaOmer represents that aspect of a desire to receive for oneself alone being transformed to one of sharing. And therefore, on the night of Lag BaOmer, one is also advised to be awake all evening. So he too can not only connect with Rabbi Shimon, not only to connect with the tzaddik who is actually the channel for this awesome power and energy, but also because that evening is Hod Shebahod, which is similar to Malchut, the Malchut. I think in passing it would be noteworthy in mentioning that 49 in Hebrew is Mem Tet. Mem 40, Tet 9, 49. But it is also an abbreviation of Mem Tet Masim Tovim, Machshavot Tovot. This embodies the energy intelligence of the desire to restrict. Good deeds, good thoughts, positive thoughts. As the Ari in his Eitz HaChaim says, Levushe Mochin, clothing that embodies Mochin, intelligences, packets of energy. It's how you think, is how you develop the packets of energy around you. Think positive, because heaven help you if you think negative, that's what you create around you. If human activity is negative, that's what you're going to create around you. Packets of negative energy. This is Shavuot. This is Lag BaOmer. And now to the secret of how to connect with that awesome power on Shavuot. On Lag BaOmer, it's rather simple. Read and continue to read that Zohar throughout the evening. But on Shavuot, it's equally as simple. However, there are more stringent guidelines and certain particular readings that have to connect to this permanency of laying to rest death. The secret as to how to draw down the keta of Zeir Anpin, which lays to rest the aspect of Mavet, death, is we begin with Genesis. And generally speaking, throughout the entire Torah, which includes the 5 books of Moses and prophets, the general rule will be to read the first 3 verses of each parsha, of each weekly portion, the first 3 and the last 3. And if we come across a portion that might have 4 or 5 until the end of a chapter, then to complete the chapter. This holds true throughout Genesis and the other 4 books of Moses, along with prophets. So we begin with Genesis, chapter 1, and chapter 2, up until and including verse 3. And that's it. And then you immediately jump to the end of Genesis, and you read the last 3 verses and continue that way. The first 3 and last 3 of every parsha. And then you come to Exodus, do the same thing. However, when we come to the parsha, the weekly portion of Jethro, here there is an addition to the reading. We begin the first 3 verses in Jethro, as is customary with all others. But in addition, chapter 19 of Jethro is to be read until the end of the Parsha. Now, for those of you who do not read Hebrew, at least study the verses in English. For those of you who do not understand Hebrew but can read Hebrew, do not be concerned that you do not understand the words. That is not what's important. It is no less and no different than when you do not understand how that telephone works. But nevertheless, you still make use of it. Okay? You then continue on with Mishpatim and continue to read. In Mishpatim, in chapter 24 of Exodus, we're still in Exodus, verse 12, read from verse 12 until the end of Mishpatim. And then just go right on through Leviticus, Numbers, and then when you come to Deuteronomy, you continue again with each portion having read the first 3 verses and the last 3 of Devarim. We now come to Ve'et Hanan. Ve'et Hanan, you again read the first 3, but then skip over and you come to the 10 Commandments as you did in Jethro. You come to and begin with chapter 5, which also includes the 10 Commandments, and continue on until the end of that portion of the week. Again, you skip over, including each portion, just take in the first 3 verses and the last 3 verses, and then we come to Parshat Re'eh. You read the first 3, and then you skip over, and you come to chapter 17, verse 9, until the end of the Parsha. And then continue on with Deuteronomy, reading the first 3 and the last 3 until we have completed the 5 books. We come to Ezekiel. While we're going to be reading the first 3 and last 3 verses, nevertheless, we will also include all that pertains to the reading, which is chapter 1, the entire chapter 1 of Ezekiel as well. Now, if you still have some time left, open up a book on Kabbalah. So states the Ari, and complete your night with Sodot HaTorah, with the mysteries of the Torah. And now we come to what I consider to be the most important aspect of Shavuot, and that is our meditation. Meditation, from a Kabbalistic point of view, is unfortunately not what most believe it to be. It is not merely a relaxing kind of exercise in an attempt to achieve an altered state of consciousness, or, for that matter, pure awareness. No, it involves something more than that. It is, in fact, the essence of Kabbalah. We have stressed often enough during this seminar on Shavuot that to achieve any sort of elevation or altered state of consciousness, it is going to be necessary to make and effect a transformation of our entire being. Now, I'm not saying at this moment that we shall all achieve tonight a complete transformation. However, spirituality does not involve the success or failure of our efforts. Spirituality focuses and centers upon one point: effort. The amount of effort that one is going to express in action as well as thought in his attempt at transformation. Now, transformation sounds like a very spiritual, and not only spiritual, but kind of mystical achievement that the Kabbalists felt was most necessary in achieving this altered state of consciousness that we seek this evening. No, it's far more simpler, and yet the paradox, it seems to be the greatest stumbling block for most of humankind. And what I'm referring to is the desire to receive for oneself alone, and that we exercise restriction. We exercise restriction whenever we are affected, whether we are being torn apart by our adversaries. And I'm not here to say that the Kabbalah preaches turn the other cheek. No, that's not what I mean. What I am referring to is thinking, why? Why is it happening to me? What have I done to cause that effect? Because the people around me, as well as everyone around everybody, are merely effects in their actions. It is our own thought intelligence that governs human activity. And I will even stress and take this daring step in declaring that even the Holocaust was the physical expression which only amounted to 1%. The Holocaust, that physical degradation of humankind, was merely a physical reality expression. Now, I know this is kind of going to hit you suddenly, but you know what? It agrees in principle with physics. It agrees in principle with what you have been accepting as that 1% illusionary physical reality. And so what happened in the Holocaust, and I'm referring to the Holocaust in Germany, was no different than what the sages declared during the destruction of the Holy Temple, in stating that the reason and cause for the destruction of 24,000 students was directly the result of inhumane activity on behalf of these 24,000 giants, students of Rabbi Akiva. But you know what? That happened so many years ago, And so maybe we find it a little easier to discuss. But when we're talking about something that has occurred in our own day and age, oh, it was that man in Germany. He was the cause of all of it. He was that terrible one. But if we are to believe the Kabbalah, and this is going to rub a lot of people the wrong way, and I know it, but maybe we haven't come to face reality in 2,000 years, and maybe tonight it's high time that we will. We will stare the truth in the face when it declares that you are the cause of the effect of physical expressive reality. Because that physical expression, the Holocaust, is only an illusion. And you know why it's an illusion? And I'm not here to condone those who say that 6 million Jews did not perish. No. I know you might want to take this out of context and say, well, maybe it didn't happen. Well, you know, if I was a real serious scientist, that might be something that I might be forced into. And it is not that I fear to go that far because of the consequences of what may follow when I made that kind of declaration. But you know what? I didn't. That declaration was made by the Talmud. The Talmud didn't blame the Romans. The Talmud didn't blame the environment. The Talmud didn't say these people were righteous. And look what happened. Look what the nation, that nation called Rome, did to our brethren. Did to those poor Jews who suffered. And indeed they did suffer at the hands of the beastly Romans. But I must repeat the expression of the Talmud. The reason that happened is because these 24,000 giants, scholars and students of Rabbi Akiva, brought it upon themselves. And so that effect, the Roman bestiality, was only 1% because it belongs in the realm of the physical reality. We are our worst enemies. For those who express thought, negative energy intelligence, if we do not behave justly with our fellow men, then why are we requesting mercy from the all-embracing unified reality referred to as the Lord? By what right? When we have taken matters into our own hands. Kabbalat HaTorah, the revelation of Mount Sinai, is designated by two astral influences. Mercury, Kochav, and Tu'umim, Gemini. And you know what happened on Mount Sinai? It was Kabbalat HaTorah. They received. And you know the word Kabbalah, maybe by some coincidence, if you're still on that trip, maybe that's what Kabbalat HaTorah is all about. The Kabbalah, the 99% of the cosmic code called the Bible, that instrument that physical instrument is really only 1%. I haven't said it. The cosmos have. And you know how I know that? Because, if you recall, the letter of the alphabet that created planet Kochav was the Resh. And the letter of the alphabet that created the sign of the zodiac, Gemini, was Zion. And combined, you know what those two letters make up? Raz, secret, mystery, Sod. You know what was really revealed on Mount Sinai? Not the physical expression, which also, of necessity, accompanied the Kabbalah, no less than any fool considering man as the physical expression, the body, which consists and makes up the totality of man. We all consider that man a fool because it is the metaphysical, the thought intelligence that is part of us. That's us. That's me. That's real. That's Mount Sinai. Raz. Secret. This is what we're going to meditate on tonight. And there is only one way we're going to achieve it. No matter how difficult it might seem and appear, we're going to make an effort to exercise positive thought intelligence. It is the only way, it is the only method by which you and I and all of mankind can come to grips with the misery, chaos, and disorder that seems to rule our universe. We're going to take that physical expression and treat it as a physical reality. And there is only one way that we can control that physical reality. And that is transformation. And that is a resolution that we accept the revelation of thought, energy, intelligence, Raz. This was the principle and focal point of revelation, the secret of the universe. But no secret, no soul of man could be revealed unless it is accompanied with a physical reality. That's the problem, I know. If we can do away with the physical reality. But you know what happens if you do away with the physical reality? You're dead. If there's no body, you're dead. It is the paradox of nature. It is the paradox of this universe. Nothing becomes revealed unless concealed by the physical reality. Man cannot leave his home naked. He can become revealed if he conceals himself in clothing. This is the way the universe was established. This is nothing new that you're hearing tonight. What I'm trying to do is bring to your attention that which was already known and has already existed since the time of creation. You know, all great scientists have never made any new discoveries. They only reveal that which is and was. And so it is with the Kabbalah. And so it is with the new thinking, this new age of redirecting our thoughts of the Research Center of Kabbalah. That's maybe why we're radicals. Because we're trying to bring to your attention that which you already subconsciously, unknowingly accept, and yet, due to robotic consciousness, you haven't placed the thought, your thinking, in the proper perspective. Kabbalah is not new. It was revealed on Mount Sinai. In fact, it is the principal revelation. It is a Raz. But there is only one way we can achieve and be conscious of an altered state of consciousness, that we are no longer robots. And that is through transformation. Lashon hara, and I've got to inject this aspect. Lashon hara means evil tongue. According to the Zohar, in the section of Mitzorah, in the Zohar, Zohar 3, wherein the Zohar declares, there is no tshuva on Lashon hara. Evil tongue. And we're discussing something that can even be true about your neighbor. Because if it's not true, then that falls into the category of midvah sheket terchak. You're not permitted to lie. So we're discussing evil tongue, how we can destroy an individual with evil tongue. To the extent that the Zohar declares that for all of the prohibitions in the Torah, for all of the prohibitions of the Torah, man can do tshuva. He can repent. He can make a tikkun. However, when it comes to Lashon hara, there is no tshuva. Incarnation is all that is really left. We must begin to view our fellow man as someone and something that is an integral part of ourselves. We must treat every individual as we treat the finger of our own hand. While it is not possibly the most important part of our body, nevertheless, it is an interconnected, interrelated aspect. There is no fragmentation, and the moment we throw out the perspective of fragmented universe, as the scientist would lead us to believe, we shall be one step closer to peace on earth and goodwill towards men. And before that, you can rightfully and justifiably say, forget it. He does not come because we request that he come. Oh, I'm not saying that. There we should not be thinking positive. However, if we have not changed our ways, meaning, and specifically, the laws that relate to you and I and our fellow men, then we haven't moved one step off base. not one step off base. And so when we have been discussing this evening that we are purchasing Bituach Chaim, life insurance, it is with a meditative resolution that we're going to change. And we're going to observe and view our fellow man as part of our own being, to treat him as such. This does not mean that if the Bal Lashon Hara, the one who spreads evil tongue, is not one to be pitied or to have mercy upon. He has already dug his own grave, according to Rabbi Shimon, and has no chance for repentance in this incarnation of his. And therefore, the few remaining moments of this tape on Shavuot, I have felt the need and necessity to warn all of us that we must adhere to that basic principle of avoiding any Lashon Hara, because that conflicts with the entire cosmos. I say the entire cosmos, and therefore there is no room. There is no room for tshuva any longer. Whereas if you murder, commit adultery, and some other really severe prohibitions, you can still do tshuva. You can still repent. But when we're dealing with Lashon Hara, you have gone against every thought, positive intelligence of our universe. There is no turning back. The die has been cast. And therefore, this evening, we are going to meditate on the Resh and the Zion, Raz, penetrate the deeper mystery of the human soul. For the human soul is one universal soul. And therefore, by acting negatively to another part of our soul, we are in turn destroying our own soul. And with the hope of transformation to an altered state of consciousness, we shall approach the following days until Rosh Hashanah with the assurance that we have been granted life until Rosh Hashanah without any reservations, without any holds or genetic discrepancies in that metaphysical DNA. And so may I close this seminar on Shavuos with the prayer that the revelation of Sod, Raz, Kabbalah on Mount Sinai shall indeed become a true revelation. May the Lord bless you and all of us with only the best of Chaim, but a good life. Amen. Thank you and good night.